Welcome to a spooktacular edition of Whether or Not. Colby's got your Halloween and trick-or-treating forecast. We've got nature in the news, stories on some record-breaking weather at the World Series, and some research being done right here at Penn State. And Kristy's got a feature on how weather affects bird migration. All that and more coming right up. Whether or Not starts right now. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Whether or Not. I'm your host, Brian Cizek.
And I'm your forecaster, Colby McCabe.
Well, Colby, it was very warm last weekend, but we seem to have cooled off a bit this week.
That's right, Brian. We had a cold front that passed through early on this week that's brought us back down to more seasonable temperatures, what we'd expect this time in October here at State College as we approach Halloween.
Yep, and speaking of Halloween, I'm still trying to figure out what my costume's going to be, but what's the forecast looking like for all the trick-or-treaters going out?
Well, I'll give you some details in my extended forecast later on, but I can tell you I'm forecasting plenty of ghouls and goblins for this Halloween.
Now, Colby, you don't want to scare all our viewers before the start of the show.
Sorry.
All right? But anyways, without further ado, let's head to nature in the news. Players on both the Astros and Dodgers sure could have used some relief in the first game of this year's World Series, and I'm not talking about the bullpen. Game 1 set a World Series record for the highest game temperature ever recorded, with the first pitch temperature coming in at a scorching 103 degrees in downtown Los Angeles. This shattered the record of 94 degrees in Phoenix during Game 6 of the 2001 World Series between the Diamondbacks and the Yankees, which was a great World Series, by the way. The extremely warm weather was caused by Southern California's infamous Santa Ana winds, which blow down off the mountains. Besides the effects on the players, the heat also has a big impact on the physics of the game itself, and it's good news for the hitters. Because warmer air is less dense, the ball will actually travel significantly farther when it gets this hot. A 1995 study showed that a fly ball travels an average of 16 feet farther in 90-degree air than a ball traveling in 50-degree air.
A new study from Penn State confirms that natural gas drilling in Pennsylvania has increased the number of invasive plant species that colonize the land near the well pads. This research, which was funded by the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, said that seeds of plant species like Japanese stiltgrass and phragmites are being transported to the well pads from the tires of trucks that visit the drilling sites. These seeds are also coming from the gravel that is delivered to build the pads and roads. The study found that the longer a drill has been in operation and the more wells drilled in a pad, the more likely it was the invasive species would be present. These invasive species have severely damaged the ecology of the well sites, which could hurt both the natural, environmental, and the local economies that depend on the timber that grows in the area. The solution to this issue remains to be found, but the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources has some initial ideas to prevent future damage, such as ensuring that truck tires were cleaned before coming on the site, and that gravel or other material coming in is not contaminated with the seeds or roots.
The countdown is on to send off America's newest weather satellite into orbit. The new satellite, known as JPSS-1, is scheduled to be launched on November 10th. Not to be confused with a geostationary orbiting environmental satellite, more commonly known as GOES, which orbits directly over the same point on the equator. This satellite will be a polar orbiting satellite. Polar orbiting satellites circle the globe around its poles and are much closer to the Earth's surface than geostationary satellites. They play a large role in feeding data into computer models that meteorologists use to make forecasts. This is the first in a series of 4 highly advanced polar orbiting satellites that will improve the accuracy of NOAA's weather computer models and ultimately weather forecasts. It will provide much more precise and timely observations of the Earth's atmosphere, land, and waters.
2 Californian scientists have figured out a way to achieve a wind-powered world that provides the entire planet with wind energy without the need of wind turbines all across the land. Instead, they say the best idea is to collect wind energy from the ocean surfaces. They have determined that the total force of winds over the ocean surface would generate 18 billion kilowatts of power, which is approximately equal to the annual demand of energy globally. Due to the winds over the ocean surface being greater than over the land, They estimate that wind farms over the seas can produce up to 6 watts per square meter of electricity, whereas the best wind farms that currently exist over land produce electricity at around 1.5 watts per square meter. However, this innovative idea does not come without problems. The main issue of this plan is determining how to tackle the challenge of engineering turbines that are fit for the open ocean. Other issues involve factoring in the variations in seasonal wind energy and, of course, national and global politics. Should these issues be resolved, the scientists believe that this project could potentially provide power on a global scale. A beautiful start, but it won't last all weekend. I'm Colby McCabe here to give you your central Pennsylvania forecast. Digging right into the maps, we'll see it on Friday. We have a high pressure system off the coast that will scoot on to the northeast as the weekend progresses. You see that low pressure system will approach from the west. But for Friday, we're looking at clear skies and a beautiful Friday overall with temperatures just a few degrees above average this time of year. Saturday, we'll see that front approach, and as it does, we'll have an increasing chance of precipitation as the day progresses, so the morning won't be too bad, but as you get farther and farther on in the afternoon, your chance for precip will only increase. And as we approach the nighttime and into Sunday, we'll see that we have that front approaching, and there's a dreary Sunday overall, just plenty of rain. And as you even look back here, look at this. This is snow. As the cold front approaches overnight, Sunday night, we might have a changeover as the temperatures dip below the freezing point potentially. But going into the specifics, we'll have this weekend, we have 61 degrees, a beautiful Friday to get outside and get a good start to your weekend. Friday night, it'll be mostly clear, 42 degrees, around seasonable this time of year. And then Saturday, we have the chance of afternoon showers, 63 degrees. So again, a good morning, but get your plans done early Saturday, or if you want to go on a walk out in the park early, get it done in the morning. But on Saturday night, we have the rain moving in. And then Sunday, plenty of rain, a good indoors day to just sit home, relax, and maybe even take a nap or enjoy some good food as you watch the NFL games. And now I'll throw it off to Kristy, who's got a feature on bird migration.
Have you noticed the leaves changing colors and the temperatures getting cooler? Those are the telltale signs that fall has finally arrived. And for many birds, it's their cue to head south. Although many birds don't just start flying south at the first chill they get ruffling through their feathers. Instead, they rely heavily on weather patterns to move farther, faster, and smarter.
Once cold fronts come in, those inspire the birds to move either from their wintering grounds or if they're already on migration, to move during that front. And those winds, oftentimes around here, northwest winds, will really create some great updrafts as they hit our ridges, reflect that air upwards, and basically provides free transportation for these birds. Excellent conservation of energy as they migrate for miles a day, working their way down to the wintering areas.
Fall migration typically spans from August through October, but some shorebirds begin migration as early as late June, and some land birds end migration as late as December.
There's a couple factors that get these birds to migrate. Really the main thing is motivation for food. For many of these birds, they might spend the winter here in Pennsylvania, depending on the species, or they may head south. But it's all going to depend on the resources they've got available.
There are two types of migratory birds, nocturnal and diurnal. Nocturnal migrants, which are typically long-distance migratory birds like sparrows and thrushes, soar through the night and drop out in the mornings to refuel for their next nighttime flight. These migrants typically traverse along coastlines, ridges, and peninsulas with a southerly orientation. Diurnal migrants, on the other hand, which are typically larger birds like raptors, prefer to fly during the day.
A broad-winged hawk is named for its broad wings, and what they use those for is to ride thermals, which is just hot air that comes up off the ground, and they're going to ride that for as far as they can, and it just kind of lets them go on cruise control while they're just kind of floating over and gliding.
Rarely do you get to see nocturnal and diurnal migrants fly together, but in extreme situations like geographic barriers or hurricanes, fallouts occur. This is when hundreds to thousands of birds congregate in a small geographic area to escape a challenging flight ahead. Fallouts can be seen during storms, fog, and even just ahead of a cold front when there are strong headwinds and the air is just too unstable for a smooth sailing, energy conserving flight. If birds were to fly through these draining conditions, they would likely become too stressed and weak to complete their migration. After those unfavorable conditions pass that have kept the birds bottled up in one area for a few days, spectacular flights take place. Most migratory birds require dry, cool air, clear skies, and northerly winds. One exception to these requirements are migratory birds on the west coast. They actually prefer to fly in easterly winds and tend to have large fallouts during Santa Anas, which are warm winds that push the birds westward and offshore, disorienting them. Well, regardless of where they are flying from, to make these long treks, migratory birds bulk up ahead of time.
Sometimes they're not going to be eating for a very long period of time, so they're going to eat as much as they can right before they migrate. And September is kind of the time whenever they're going to be migrating, and so they're going to be eating and eating and eating in late August and early September, just kind of getting ready for that migration. And they're going to be flying really long distances daily to try and make it down there as quick as possible.
Because these birds make their trips as fast as possible and their flight arrangements are based on the weather, these spectacular flights can be hard to witness. One website, birdcast.info, actually forecasts the migratory flights of different species to help you witness these events. If you want a good chance at seeing migratory birds in action just before sunrise the day after a cold front passes, head to an area with an open view of the sky on a high mountain in the extensive desert or on a north-south oriented peninsula with a freshwater source nearby. Well, I think I'm in a pretty good location to see some migratory birds here at the Rothrock State Forest, and I think I will do just that. For Whether or Not, I'm Kristy Steward.
A seasonal week is in store for Central Pennsylvania. Hi, I am back here to give you your extended forecast. But first, taking a look at the weekend recap, we'll see 61 degrees on Friday, a beautiful day overall. Saturday, as that front approaches, we have increasing chances of showers. And then Sunday, just a rainy day with a chance of snow overnight. And as we look into the extended forecast, we'll see for your Halloween, it's looking like 50 degrees or so during the day, but at night it could dip in the mid or low 30s. So keep your layers on when you go out trick-or-treating that night. But as we approach the rest of the week, you'll see that we get higher than average on Thursday, but a dip more towards average around 57 degrees on Friday.
Well, Colby, it's looking like Halloween's going to be a pretty good forecast all in all, although maybe a little bit on the chilly side.
That's right, Brian. As the kids go out trick-or-treating on Tuesday night, it'll be in the mid to low 30s, so you'll definitely want to put on some extra layers. But as the week progressed, the conditions got a little warmer, closer towards average.
All right, now speaking of trick-or-treating, what's your favorite Halloween candy?
It's got to be Reese's Cups.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. Love the milk chocolate and peanut butter, absolutely delicious. But if you were eating Reese's at the World Series game this week, they probably melted all over your hands. But we flipped it on you on the Weather Whiz Quiz because earlier in the show we asked what was the lowest recorded game time temperature in World Series history? Was it A, 26 degrees, B, 30 degrees, C, 34 degrees, or D, 38 degrees? If you said D, you are correct. Game 4 of the 1997 World Series saw the Cleveland Indians play host to the Florida Marlins.
That's right, Brian. And both teams were greeted with snow during batting practice. And by the time the game started at 8:20 p.m., the game time temperature was 38 degrees with a wind chill of 18 degrees. While Cleveland won that game 10-3, the cold weather would not affect the final series as the Marlins would go on to win it 4-3.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. You would not want to take a fastball off the end of the bat in that game. That would not be fun.
No, your hand would hurt for a week.
Yeah, your hands would be stinging forever.
No.
But anyway, that's all we have for this week's edition of Whether or Not. I'm your host, Brian Cizek.
And I'm your forecaster, Colby McCabe.